Medal of Valor for rescues I made in 1991. And it's a very different animal now, as I learned talking to 30 firefighters, seeing how it works today. But that's my experience, that's my title. My name's Bob Nix, B-O-B-N-I-C-K-S. I appreciate you guys' interest in the story. I will start by saying the media is very persistent. So I gave interviews yesterday I didn't intend on giving. So you guys have more context you normally would have coming to a press conference. So I probably won't go through every detail. But at the end, we'll, if you could hold your question at the end. In fact, if you got a real important question in the middle, don't feel bad about asking. But let's try to hold the question in if we can, please. I want to start off by saying that this is a very emotional issue. Oh, well, let me start this way. I know you guys, partly because I gave a message that we're having a no confidence vote today. But what we're really having today likely is, just to be very clear, is an emergency, kind of a meeting of the membership to decide if we're going to do a vote of no confidence and how to formulate that, if we decide to do that, how we formulate the motion. And that's a member-driven process at that point, not my process once we put it on the table. And likely it'll result in an online vote next week that will end at 5 o'clock on Thursday. So I just want to let you guys know what the process is. And I do want to talk about votes no confidence, my philosophy on it really quick. I'm very much against votes no confidence. Many times they're done by fire associations, it's over some labor issue that comes across quite whiny to the public, and I've always been against them. I don't think they have a lot of value. But in this case, I think it's in public interest that this information really needs to come out, and it needs to come out in a transparent, accountable way. There's been talk on social media, this is some sort of ploy to help our bargaining position. That's absolutely the opposite of truth. If anything, you don't want to have these sort of things happening before you go into negotiations. So I just wanted to put that on the table really quick. If anything, this goes against our interest. It's that important that the public, I think, hear what happened so this doesn't happen again. Are there any questions really quickly on the vote no confidence procedures? Okay. I want to also make sure that people know that this is, I'm trying to make this very fact-based today and less emotional. Obviously, my post was very emotional, and I stand by the facts, but I want to get this more down to the tone of what the facts are, less emotion. This isn't personal against the fire chief. The fire chief is a fine person. What we're talking about here is review as actions and decisions that firefighters have a lot of problem with, and we're going to go over that in detail. And the public needs to know exactly what happened and how they can expect their fire department to behave and act and protect them. I'm going to start by reading a statement from real firefighters, just to give you some context of why this is so important to firefighters. Some people might think, you know, what do the firefighters care? They just get a paycheck, they go home, if they deploy or not deploy, what do they care? And you know, we are a little bit different breed of people. So I want to read this from a real firefighter, not some old guy like me that's been on our operations for a long time. Because I think it really helps set the tone. I think of what every firefighter thinks, and I've got several of these. This one I want to read real quickly. I would start with a background statement to include our risk a lot to save a lot. I would say that we are grown from babies as firefighters to go and get people as our first reaction to every incident. We start in offensive mode. It's not it's not only when the conditions are dire. We know when people are not dead, we go. This is the backdrop of everything we do. We go every time. We go until we figure out that there's no reason to go further. We go every time until we can't go anymore. In this situation where people are in harm, and we have the means and training and the equipment and the people to possibly the most likely save them, there's only one answer, and that's to go. No budget reasons are good enough. No any will ever stop us from doing that. But in this case, it's sad that but you need to know what stopped us from going. And just kind of set the tone. So we're here to talk about the Austin Fire Chief Standing Order to not deploy under any circumstances was clearly to save money at the expense of saving lives. I do want to say something about the city manager and council. I've done a tremendous amount of work to make my timeline as accurate as I can. The council was unaware of all of this, and the city manager's office, I believe, was unaware also. If I thought differently, I'd report that. This was a chief's decision not to deploy. We have a memo up on the board here we're going to provide you if you want it, but we can talk, I'm going to talk about a little bit right now. But everything I have done, and I've spent a good deal of time talking to many, many people on the subject, it was his decision alone to not deploy. To establish the evidence I will share with you and to create my timeline of events, I interviewed over 20 firefighters over the weekend. They're intimate with the Special Operations Section and particularly with deployments and the order by Chief Baker to deny the deployments under any circumstances. In fact, what was said up and down the chain is, do not deploy, don't even ask. And Chief Baker is a very charming person to meet and talk to, no doubt about it. And he's got a charisma about him, and he's got a certain number of well-polished anecdotes he puts out there that are appropriate and good, stuff like that. So, but within our department, he's known as a bully. He's known as being vindictive. He's known as being retaliatory. So when you play this when you have an order coming down the chain that says, we don't deploy, don't even ask, people know what that means. And people didn't deploy when they normally would have because of that direct order. So let's look at the evidence. This is a memo that I'll provide to you, but it came from somebody on the command staff. He didn't provide it for me, by the way. I got through other means. And it basically talks about stopping the deployments until October 1st. And it's just clearly, we're talking about saving money, but even stranger is talking about not getting our reimbursements from the state quick enough, which I think is even more egregious. So, and so anyway, if you go down the bottom, it even kind of indicates this to some degree. It says, P.S. Do not reply all to discuss. If you have any questions, oh no, excuse me, it's right above this. Oh, I'm sorry, here it is. Do not reply to discuss. If you have any questions, contact me directly. Also, I don't know if EMS is doing deployments or not. The argument that AFD makes money on deployments is moot because it's a cash flow problem. And it has little to do with the amount we're being reimbursed. Because we do not, the truth is we do not save any money on deployments. If that was an issue, if that was important, which of course is not, because we don't put dollars over people. We just don't do that in emergency services. We get paid, we get reimbursed fully for our deployments plus a little bit of extra. So we literally make money on deployments, okay? And now Chief Baker's not even saying that here. He's actually said this in the KXAN interview yesterday. He's saying, I was trying to send a message to the people giving us deployment to get us quicker. If that is true, which I believe the interviewer said it correctly, that's even worse in my mind than just doing to save money. You're basically trying to punish bean counters at the expense of people that we need to rescue. So after this, so I didn't know about, I knew that there was a moratorium on deployments, and I thought it came from this letter here, but it doesn't. But this letter here is what prompted a meeting between myself, Chief Baker, and the Assistant City Manager, Eddie Garcia. And what it does is, it's the first thing, how we got here, was Chief Baker wanted to brown out nearly 12% of our fire engines to save money. It's never been done in the history of Austin. We're not a Detroit or Cleveland or Pittsburgh. We are not a Rust Belt city. We have rising revenues. To brown out engines for money is in my mind, crazy talk. And so I talked to the manager. He said, Bob, don't worry about brownouts. I'm not like them politically or operations. That's great. So then they came up with a scheme to brown out the units and put squads in their place to save money, which basically means 2 firefighters in a pickup truck instead of 6 fully staffed fire engines. And so I went to go to the manager and talk to him about that and explain to him why that wasn't good. So he goes, Bob, we need to save money. You know, I said, do we? I said, we're already cut to the bone, you know. you guys made a mistake on estimating tax revenues, which can happen. I'm not faulting anybody. But take money out of the reserves. We don't have any money on the meat on the bone left to give back. And so they stopped that idea, which I really appreciate the manager listening to me. Then they went to this next thing where they deployed 42 of our staff members from staff back to operations. Some of these people have post-incident stress, known sleep deprivation issues, and the chief told me when I brought that up, he goes, I can't decide who has more harm done to them by working this job harder than another. They're all going back, is what he is implying. And so that's kind of shows you the tone the fire chief took and the pressure he felt under to really cut costs, okay? I thought this memo contained the deployment information was in the letter I showed you earlier. So in that meeting, we talked about deployments. I brought it up with Eddie Garcia and Chief Baker. And I said, Chief Baker, we make money on deployments. He goes, no, we don't, Bob. That's not true. I said, Chief, yes, it is true. It's absolutely true. We make money on deployments. No, you're mistaken. I said, Chief, I'm not mistaken. And I said, Chief, if what you're trying to look at Eddie, the city manager said, if what the chief's trying to say is that the money may not come in, the reimbursement may not come in this fiscal year, that's no problem because you got a multi-$100 million reserve fund, City of Austin does. Maybe it's not that high, but it's a large reserve fund. You can simply do the deployment, make a footnote, reimburse it later, and we're good. And so the assistant city, I thought the manager's office kind of understood that at the time, but they were surprised to hear that. And they never heard from Chief Baker before that he was stopping deployment, so it didn't really resonate as much as I thought it was going to with them. But that conversation was had to Baker directly. He seemed to not understand exactly how the system worked for reimbursements and how by stopping these deployments didn't save money at all. That was very concerning. So that gets us down to leading into the deployment denials. So the way it works, we deploy several different ways. I'm going to go into every single one, but I'm going to go over the deployments that were requested for us for the Kerrville Swiftwater response. So on July 2nd, okay, 2 days before water even started to rise, a group me text comes from Texas Task Force 1 to all the different cities in the state, individual cities. You know, they don't send one to everybody. They send one to this city, one to that city, all the cities that looking for people to respond. And so the way that response works, Texas Task Force 1 response works, is you have an agreement with the state to say yes when they call, unless there's exceptional reasons that you shouldn't say yes. Okay, so with Chief Baker's order to not deploy under no circumstance, you're already kind of breaking the commitment we have. And I want to say this really quick because I might forget, that breaking of commitment not only happened this year, but last year too. I didn't know this until I started researching this more, but Chief Baker put the same moratorium on deployments last fiscal year, for several months. Texas Task Force 1 is starting to look at Austin as an unreliable partner because when we call, we say no. They provide us training and equipment. They're starting to not provide us the same level of training we used to because we say no when we're asked. The notion when you get in this thing is you're going to say yes, you're going to deploy. So now I'll move on to the timeline again. So on the 2nd of July, a group me text comes down from Texas Task Force 1 asking, it's an informal poke, if you will, to say, hey, can you guys deploy? Our officers say no, because they have a standing order that's very clear, don't deploy, don't ask. On the 3rd, the same thing came down again. Another poke through GroupMe, and you never get an official response if you say no to the informal poke from GroupMe. Does that kind of make sense to everybody? So early on, Chief Baker was saying we never got an official response. That's true, but immaterial. You don't get an official response if you say no to the GroupMe text, okay? And so on the 3rd, the same thing happened. Now, there's been questions on social media from the public, which I think is important to talk about, is they're like, how did you know that water's going to rise that high on July 2nd? And we didn't. Nobody anticipated that much rise, in all fairness. What we do is, in the emergency service department, it's very common to say, We think something might happen, so let's pre-deploy resources so if something does happen, we're in the theater ready to make rescues. Because if you operate in a reactive fashion, you're 8 hours behind the game. So we would have said yes to either one of those requests. And our special operations people were already starting to pre-roster people and getting these crews ready to go based on the hope that they would. We would have been in the theater of operation in Kerrville, pre-staged, the late afternoon on the 3rd, before one drop of water has risen in that area. That's how good emergency response agencies operate, and it's very common. Another thing that has been brought up in social media is, hey, maybe the chief was doing a good job of protecting resources, and we need those resources in Austin. Our special operations crews are stellar. They know what they're doing. They do this all the time. If that order wasn't there to not deploy, they would have routinely said yes. It probably wouldn't even gone to the chief till later on, because it's routinely, you say yes, that's your commitment to the state to be part of this system. And we would have pre-rostered, we would use off-duty personnel, not on-duty personnel, and we have our 1,300 person department. We can flex up, we can send resources to one area, and we can still protect the city of Austin as always our first priority. So the notion that's trying to be risen that perhaps Chief Baker's decision was good because he's protecting resources does not hold water, because that's not how we traditionally do it ever. We're only doing it under this circumstance of trying to save money. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so on the 4th, I found out about this late. I found out about it around 6 o'clock on the 4th, and it was already people died and water's flowing, it's terrible. So I started texting Chief Baker, and I said, Chief Baker, this has got to be a rumor, but I heard we're not deploying. Can you help me out? Because my board and some of the members are really getting angry, so I would like to calm this down. He's not responded to me to this day. I sent about 15 texts that night in the morning, and I said, Chief, I said, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but people are dying, and we need to be there. We are, and I didn't say this earlier, I need to make this clear. We are we have a lot of great boat crews in the state of Texas. Austin, Texas has the best boat crews in the state, if not the nation. We explicitly train with San Antonio for response to the hill country because it's in our backyard. So we have the resources, we have the training, we have the personnel, we are absolutely geared to doing in that area of work. And we refuse to go because of a standing order. Do not even ask, okay? And so I started sending pictures. My daughter lives out there, and she knows mothers who have kids in Camp Mystic. So I started sending the chief pictures. And I said, with their names by them, I said, Chief, open these up and zoom in on these little faces, 8 to 10 years old. We need to do something. No response, no deployment, nothing. So on the 5th, I started getting calls from so at the 5th, I sent some texts to the city manager's office, and they were very responsive. They got back to me. They suggested that we wait until later to have these sort of conversations, and I think that was good advisement. That's why I waited as long as I did. I was ready to do something right now, but the manager's TC was absolutely right. You shouldn't be, doing this sort of talk, and it's questionable. I may be too early, but I'll tell you why I got there. When there's rescues being made, bodies in the water, it's just not the right time. So I took his advice, but the city manager's office contacted me every day, trying to find out what's going on. And they told me, they said, Bob, if we would have heard that deployments came, we would absolutely 100% approve them. We approved police, we approved EMS. Nothing was ever brought up to us. That's because Chief Baker said, no deployments, don't even ask. And when Chief Baker says that, our people are in so much fear of retaliation that that's exactly what they do. And some of them are regretting that. On the 4th, earlier, finally, at a battalion chief staffing meeting, an officer breaks in and goes, guys, we got to do something. So the person that's running all the boat crews in Kerrville is a retired Austin firefighter. He came in about the same time I did. He's calling, and other rescuers are calling Austin. Why aren't you guys here? They, to us, as help is one of the best crews in the nation, or in the state at least. And they said we have depleted resources. We have Black Hawk helicopters grounded because we don't have rescue swimmers. So they got the equipment, they got the pilot, they got the helicopter. They're on the ground because they don't have a rescue swimmer to man them, to staff them and make rescues. And so even though there were higher level chiefs in that room, the answer was, chief said, don't even ask, we can't even ask. So then the reason why we got 3 rescue swimmers is a firefighter stuck his neck out. He will not be named because for fear of retaliation. He knew somebody that he knew personally on Chief Baker's command staff, went to that person, and that person advocated for Baker to at least send 3 rescue swimmers. And what happened was, Chief Baker came back and he said, okay, we can send 3 rescue swimmers, 3 days, that's it. That's all the city manager's office will allow. I talked to the city manager's office about it. They said that's absolutely not true. We never got any request. Anything that came to this office we would have approved. This is why I believe it's on Baker and not the manager, and not the city, and not anybody else. And so that's how we got 3 rescue swimmers. There's some sort of conflation of responses Chief Baker tries to talk about to act like he responded when he didn't. So he talks about these boat teams that went out to Largo Vista. That was not Kerrville. That was not a Texas Task Force response. That's what you call a CAPCOG response. Some people might call it something different, but we have a CAPCOG area is 13 counties that we have a special mutual aid agreement with that we will respond in times of need. And it was done with on-duty resources. We actually had to brown out a fire station to do it, to help out Largo because they were having so much difficulty with the rescue situation. So, and that wasn't under his moratorium, by the way. So that was a CAPCOG response. That was not part of the letter I showed you earlier. So when he's talking about that, that has nothing to do with Kerrville. Has nothing to do with Texas Task Force 1 deployment. Like many people in public information offices do these days, they try to conflate, confuse, and attack my credibility to hide the facts. Just plain and simple. And so we started finally sending some resources, I believe because of the pressure we started putting on the city manager and the fire chief's office to do it. I found out today that the city manager's office has talked to TIFMAS and Texas Task Force 1, and they are explicitly requesting that any deployment you have, send it to the city manager along with the regular channels. We want to make sure we don't miss it again. Indicating to me again that this is stopped at Chief Baker with some misguided idea that he's saving money somehow by doing this, which he's not, over the lives of the people we're sworn to protect. And so I could go on and on, but I've gone on long enough. I'll be happy to stand for questions.
Do you think this situation is going to impact the public's trust with Austin's fire department?
Yes, it should, and that's my whole purpose, is to restore public trust. Years ago, as a battalion chief, I was running a fire, and some citizens came to me and said, "You guys did a great job, thank you." And I almost broke down in tears. We did not do a good job on that fire. And what I realized is that people trust us even when they shouldn't. And so from that point on, professionally, I've always told myself we need to be honest. What we do right, what we do wrong. That's how we restore the public trust. Hiding this doesn't restore public trust. Transparency and accountability is what will restore the public trust, because you have amazing, some of the best firefighters, if not the best firefighters. I'm not just saying in the world, in Austin, Texas. They care, they're trained, they're in good shape, they're the best. All you got to do is, you don't have to tell them to go, you got to hold them back if anything, right? We need a chief that cares as much about the public as just firefighters do.
Hey Bob, I want to ask about the timeline. So you said the informal requests from TIFMAS came in July 2nd and 3rd.
Yes.
Chief Baker says he didn't know of any request until July 4th.
Yep.
Do you have any reason to doubt that, or do you think he's accurate?
Well, the reason to doubt it is kind of what I said. So it's probably likely he never saw it because he had an order to not deploy and don't even ask. So the reason he didn't see it was because he ordered them not to show it to him. So that's the answer to that. The reason he finally saw something on the 4th was because somebody literally went around the chain of command at their own personal risk, found somebody else could advocate, and that's how the chief got the request. Does that answer your question, sir?
You said the chief hasn't responded to your text still that you sent last week. When he does respond, or when you eventually see him, what's the conversation that you want to have with him? You said you guys are good friends, and you.
Well, I didn't say we're good friends, but he's a fine person. You know, I like him on a lot of different levels. But I don't like some of the attributes about him I discussed. You know, I don't know. I haven't even thought about that. This is kind of like, you know, I'm coming at him pretty hard, right, with very serious allegations that you probably caused loss of lives by your inattention and inability to deploy, refusal to deploy, based on savings, potentially savings of money. And so, you know, when you do that to somebody, I imagine the relationship's pretty frosty. So I don't know that it'd be a great conversation. I'm trying not to be personal, although I probably have, even in this meeting, been a little bit, and I apologize for that. It's kind of hard to separate the person from the decision sometimes.
Is there a certain criteria that has to be met before deploying these firefighters to certain floods, or?
Under normal conditions, no. So when you become a partner in a statewide response group like that, Texas Task Force 1 or TIFMAS, it's kind of it's a relationship, it's a commitment you're going under through an MOU where you're expected to respond if you're asked, and that's why you enter into that sort of agreement. And so normally, I asked some of the special operators in Austin what normally would happen. They'd say the grouping text come down. We would say yes. Not even ask the chief. We would say yes, because that's what we do. That's what we promised to do. We'd start pre-rostering to get people ready to go. Then the formal request comes down. We send up the changes as a formality, because you've already signed an agreement that you're good to go, except under extreme circumstances. That's why you have the right of refusal. It could be that all your vehicles are broken down, or it could be that Austin really is under siege. You know, we really can't spare anything. But that was not the case, and so normally we would go. It's not even a question, because that's what we committed to do by being a part of that response group.
In your ideal world, how many Austin firefighters would have ended up going, and what kind of equipment would have been?
You would have started off with, it depends on what they request, right? But you always would start off with at least one boat team, which is a boat of 6 people with 2 boats. A lot of those resources are provided by the state of Texas, by the way, as part of this response group. We'd probably send some search and rescue, some SAR individuals, maybe up to 8. It's possible if we knew helos would be there, which we might not have known on the second or third, we would have started resourcing rescue swimmers. But at the very least, you would have had some. At the very, very least, you would have had a boat team, which is 2 boats and 6 people.
And it ended up being 3 deployed this weekend?
It ended up being no boat crews, no search and rescue crews until recently. I think the pressure we put on and the help you've given me has done that. The rescue swimmers are very specialized. Everybody in special operations is a rescue swimmer, but the ones that dangle from a helicopter, we probably have 8 or 10 of them, maybe 11. And we deploy all the time for these sort of rescues, because it's the absolute thing you need. Everybody knows about the Coast Guard rescue swimmer that saved so many people. That's exactly the resource we're talking about here in rescue swimmers. It's the guy that dangles from the helicopter and pulls people out of trees and off rooftops and stuff. And again, they had helicopters sitting on the ground with a pilot not going up because they had no rescue swimmers to provide.
Have you been in touch with anyone at TDM about the request and the delayed response and what difference that could have made?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, please.
Have you been in touch with anyone at TDM, or State Emergency?
I have not personally. I've been in touch with a lot of firefighters that have been in touch with TDM, because when you're on these teams, it becomes a very small rescue community that you speak with quite a bit. So a lot of my information, unfortunately, would be secondhand. But I'm very solid and confident that the timeline I'm providing you about how these requests came in and how they're denied are absolutely true.
Is there anything that you would say to these families that felt like they were left without any help?
I just don't even have words. Our firefighters are trained for that area. Our firefighters have the equipment, they have the desire, they have the will, they have the power to go up and actually, I know some of those girls could have been survived if we had had the best boat crew the day before on scene. I know it. I know it in my heart. I know it as a battalion chief. I know it as a former swiftwater tech myself. And the fact that we didn't do it and we let them down is just, it's unconscionable. And that's why we're here. This is such an egregious action that we have to bring it into the public domain and talk about it. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for coming. If you need any of these memos, I'd be happy to provide them. I'd say get with Christine so you can get down your contact information. If you have any other follow-up questions from me, I'll be available. Thank you so much.